Previously, we discussed how this transaction went together. The Trust Solutions transaction goes together in a very distinct way, and just as distinctly, it comes apart in our order of distribution. So let's talk about that for a minute. The very first thing that has to happen when our transaction starts to unravel is that we have to pay off all the existing loans. Now, this is an insurance for the original beneficiary, beneficiary number one, that as the trust terminates, all the loans that they were liable for have now been paid off. The second thing that we're going to do is we're going to pay the cost of sale if the buyer or the seller do not wish to buy the property from each other. That happens when beneficiary number two decides that they do not want to exercise their option to purchase the property. Remember, they can exercise that option up until 6 months before the termination of the trust. So from day one up until 6 months before the termination, they can buy the property from the trust anytime they want. At the end of that period, or at somewhere along the way they decide they do not want to buy the property, beneficiary number one, the original seller, has an option for 10 days to buy the property from the trust. If both parties decide they do not want to buy the trust property, then it is put on the market by the trustee, who picks a realtor and puts it on the market. Those costs then come out as number two on our order of distribution. The third order of distribution is that we're going to return any fees that the seller paid in the original transaction, with the exception of real estate commissions. So if the original seller paid the facilitation fee, the escrow fee, the title fee, any fees whatsoever to put the transaction together, in our order of distribution, number three, they're going to receive those funds back. Again, remember, no commissions. Number four is where we return any fees paid by the buyer in the original transaction, including real estate commissions. So as the transaction goes together and we go down our list, when we run out of money, we stop. We're going to pay off all the existing loans, pay back the costs of sale if neither of the parties are buying the property from the trust. Third, we're going to return any fees that the seller paid, with the exception of real estate commissions. Fourth, we're going to return any fees the buyer paid in the original transaction, including real estate commissions. Finally, when we get to the number five, we're going to be splitting any monies left over. Those are profits, and we're going to split those between the buyer and the seller on a predetermined basis. Now, going into the transaction, everyone discussed this and agreed to it. Remember, the minimum split for either party is 10% of any potential future profits. So the best split for a buyer is going to be 90% to them, 10% to the seller. And if you flip that over, the very best split possible for a seller is that they get 90% of the future profits and the buyer only gets 10%. If neither party gets at least 10%, the IRS could throw the transaction out, saying there was no incentive for profit and it was simply a sham transaction for financing. So as we go through our order of distribution, we pay back all of the monies, and the transaction looks like it did the day before we entered into the transaction, except now there's money to be split on both sides. If you'd like to print out this page, simply hit the icon at the bottom of the page and you can print it out.